A recall is to remove an elected official from office. Why? Because he didn't do his job. Did he break the law necessarily? No, it actually is not dealing necessarily with breaking the law, but it's dealing with not being able or not having done their job in a positive manner. Now, what was the state that we talked about that involved a recall? California. And what's the process, thinking back to that recall ballot that I blew up on the wall? Okay, anybody can run, but you're asked 2 questions on a recall ballot. What are those 2 questions? What's that? Okay, should the person be recalled or removed from office? If you answer no, at that point, Talisa, what happens?
Then the person gets taken off?
If you answer no.
If you answer no, then the person... Then you stay.
If you answer no, then the person stays and you're done. But if you answer yes, you want them removed, then what is question 2?
Who are you going to... Who do you want to be the next?
Who do you want to replace the person that you recalled? And when you mentioned before the idea that everybody was running, okay, when you think back to this, number 1, go ahead.
Richard Simmons popped into my mind when...
Richard Simmons was on the ballot. Who else was? Angelina, the adult entertainer, if you remember. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the ultimate governor, became on the ballot who got into office. Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler magazine. All sorts of people that may or may not have been qualified. And the point that I made in class was direct democracy, the idea that people make the decision sounds good, but be careful what you wish for. If little Gary Coleman and Angelina the stripper and Larry Flint and the governor and all these other folks are actually running for governor of the largest state in the country. Go ahead, Walter.
Is that how Arnold Schwarzenegger came into office based on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how he came into office. But he has been reelected, but that's how he came into office in the beginning. Absolutely. We had the House advances bill to let young felons clear their records. Y'all remember that one?
Yeah.
What was the gist of that?
But they would get a second chance.
Who would get a second chance?
The 18-year-olds.
Was it 18-year-olds? Kids under the age of 18, like how old? 16 and 17-year-olds could get 1 strike, if you will, off of their record if they committed a nonviolent felony. What's the example of a nonviolent felony?
Traffic. I mean,
Stealing. Shoplifting.
Okay, breaking and entering. That kind of a thing. Anything else that jumped out that might actually impact y'all in here? Carrying a concealed weapon on school grounds. This could be forgiven if they did 2 things. What were the 2 things? Community service. And how long was the community service? 100 hours. And then what was the second thing?
Fine.
Yeah, there's probably a fine, but that's not the big thing.
You had to go without another one.
For how long?
Like 2 years.
2 years of probation would clear your record. Now, why would North Carolina consider this? Okay, so if you are convicted of a felony or a nonviolent felony, then you're going to have to check that box, which means it's going to limit your job options. What else is limited?
school.
School. Why school?
You can't really get loans.
You can't get federal aid to go to school. What other career option? Military. You can't join the military with this. And then a number of you said the voting right, which is true, but maybe not as much as important on this. Their thought is if we take away their rights when they make a mistake as a young person, then indeed when we take away those rights, bottom line is they're just going to continue in crime because they've got no other options. We'll forgive it once. But if they forgive it once, what's the danger?
Everyone's going to want the same treatment.
Everybody's going to want the same treatment, or people might think, hey, I got off once, I can keep doing things and getting off, which might actually undo exactly what's going on. If I was 18 and committed something and couldn't get off, I would have a problem with that too. Yeah, Will?
Isn't that when the 3 strikes law comes into play, though?
Depends on the state, but for test purposes, let's not even worry about 3 strikes because I am not going to ask anything about that. Land grabs. Court endorses the land grab. What was that about? Anybody? Or do you just remember it and want to move on? Eminent domain is what you said, and then you just defined it. Eminent domain is the idea that the government can take a person's property with just compensation in order to use it for a public purpose. And what was the example of the public purpose? Go ahead.
I mentioned the Supreme Court justice.
Okay, before we get to that, roads, what else?
To build economic development.
Hospitals. schools, roads, things that everyone would use. But in the article, what were they trying to do up in Connecticut?
Economic.
They weren't trying to build a highway. Not a bridge. Go ahead, Sarah. What's that? We're going to get to a hotel, but not exactly. Yes.
Weren't they trying to take the low income? Is that the wrong article?
No, that's right. They're trying to take low-income housing for what?
Housing for better schools.
Not schools. What's that?
It was luxury apartments.
They were trying to build luxury apartments, shopping malls, and restaurants. And their argument was, if we're able to build these things, what do we give to the community? Jobs and higher land values, and ultimately we're going to be able to generate taxes. So it's going to be more valuable this way. What did the Supreme Court say when they ruled on this? Is it allowed to be able to do this or no? Yes. The Supreme Court said, yes, you are able to do this. They said that as long as you pay them for it, even if it doesn't benefit everyone per se, the jobs, the taxes, the residences, that will basically flow down into the community in a really positive manner. So this was legal. But you mentioned the hotel. What was the hotel?
They were trying to, I think, build a hotel because it would generate more jobs and higher taxes.
And who were they going to take the land from? The Supreme Court justice that actually wrote the opinion of the case, at which point George W. stepped in and signed an executive order saying, no, the government can't do this. Now the question is, now that Obama's in office, will he recognize that executive order? That we don't know yet. But bottom line is, Bush actually took the government's ability to do this away. It benefited everybody in the grand scheme of things, but maybe more for his conservative justice that was on the Supreme Court. So something to think about there.